This is one of the most beautifully crafted paintings in the entire history of art anywhere in the world. A sunset over the Atlantic, crimson clouds, a ship sailing in the distance. Art critics called it the noblest sea ever painted by human hands. So look in the water now, because beneath all that color, this painting is hiding a horror that can still make viewers look away almost 200 years later. A crime that a British court once called something unimaginable. A betrayal so disturbing that the greatest art critic of the age, the man who originally championed this painting to the world, eventually couldn't bear to be in the same room with it. The painter hid something shocking in this painting that will change the way you see art forever. Today, we're going to look down into the water. The painting was completed in 1840, and it hangs today in the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston. It's called The Slave Ship, and the painter was none other than J.M.W. Turner. To understand this painting, you have to understand a bit about the painter himself. Turner was 65 when he exhibited this work. He was already considered the greatest living landscape painter in Britain. He'd spent his entire career chasing light, the way the sun breaks through storm clouds, the way the water catches fire at sunset, and the way the air itself seems to burn. He was also politically committed. His closest patron of decades, Walter Fox, had been a campaigning abolitionist alongside William Wilberforce. Turner was surrounded all his life by the cause. By 1840, Britain had outlawed the slave trade, and then slavery itself. But around the world, the trade continued. Turner knew the battle wasn't over, and he knew an artist at his level had a choice: paint the storm from a safe distance, or put people inside of it. He chose to jump into the deep. So let's look very carefully at the hidden details in this masterpiece. The first thing you see is the sky. An enormous, deep red sunset spills across the Atlantic. Crimson, gold, and violet fold into each other across a stormy horizon. The color's so overwhelming that the painting almost looks abstract. Pure feeling in paint. That is deliberate. The painter has trapped your eye at the top of the canvas. He wants you to see the sky first. Then your eye follows the light downward. There's a ship in the middle distance sailing away from us. Look at the hull, the clean, fast clipper lines of a vessel built for speed. This is the type of ship slave traders used to outrun Navy patrols. And its sails are partly unfurled, even with a typhoon coming in. The captain is trying to escape. Now lower your eye one more time to the water. In the foreground, partly obscured by the churning sea, is a human leg, still chained. The iron cuff is visible above the surface. Around it, strange, monstrous fish, like sharks but distorted into something closer to demons, tearing at the limb. To the left, more hands, dark hands, straining up out of the water, reaching for the surface, for air, for a breath. These aren't figures. They're just fragments. A leg here, a hand over there. The painter hasn't given us whole people because the slave traders didn't treat them as whole people. Above it all, the setting sun casts a column of light down across the water. If you trace the geometry, that column and the horizon form a cross, a cruciform laid over the drowning. But the real hidden meaning, the one that turns this painting from a memorial into an indictment, is why they are in the water. Because this was a true story with a diabolical ending. Before we continue, if you'd like to bring this painting into your own home, you can order it through my website. The link is below in the description. You'll also discover more breathtaking and controversial paintings, handpicked by me. Art that changed the world. Every print is produced with rich, detailed color that captures the full intensity of Turner's sunset, so you can turn your living room, your office, your bedroom into your own personal museum. Shipping's free worldwide, and every order directly supports videos and art history research every week. Now, let's get back into the water. This painting was inspired by a real event, a British slave ship called the Zong. In 1781, the Zong was crossing the Atlantic from Africa to the Caribbean. A series of navigational errors left the ship off course and running low on drinking water. The captain realized something cold and specific. The enslaved people in the hold had been insured, but only as cargo, at 30 pounds per head. But the insurance had one clause. If they died of thirst or disease on board, the owners received nothing. But if they were lost at sea, jettisoned to save the ship, the owners could claim the full value. Letting them die slowly meant no payout. Throwing them into the ocean meant a windfall. Over 3 days in November of 1781, the crew of the Zong threw 132 living, chained men, women, and children into the Atlantic. When the ship reached Jamaica, the owners filed an insurance claim. The insurers refused to pay, so the owners sued. He called the massacre a mere jettison. They argued, the case is the same as if wood had been thrown overboard. That sentence is what Turner answered in this painting. When he exhibited it at the Royal Academy in 1840, he hung beside it a poem he'd written himself. It ended with a question asked to slave traders, to the courts, and to the whole machine that had decided a human being could be thrown away for profit. Hope, hope, fallacious hope, where is thy market now? The painting was quickly acquired as a New Year's gift by the most influential art critic in the English-speaking world. He called it the noblest sea ever painted by human hands. He hung it over his mantelpiece, showing it off to every visitor. And then, one day, suddenly, he sold it. In his own words, the subject had become too painful to live with. The man who championed this painting to the world couldn't, in the end, live with it in his house. Art can make us feel, it can make us think, and it can also make us regret. Britain made a lot of money from the slave trade, but they certainly didn't invent it. Slavery's older than every civilization, practiced on every continent by every people for most of recorded history. Rome didn't abolish it. The Ottoman Empire didn't either. It persisted there into the 20th century. The Mughals didn't. Imperial China ended forms of bonded labor only under modern pressure. The Arab slave trade across the Sahara and the Indian Ocean ran for more than 1,000 years and was curtailed largely by a British naval force, not internal reform. When empires have ended slavery in human history, it has usually been because they were conquered or economically forced out of it, or pressured by a more powerful nation. But what Britain did was something almost no empire had ever done before. It decided to stop. In 1807, at the height of its power, Britain outlawed the slave trade. In 1833, it abolished slavery throughout the empire, and for the next 60 years, the Royal Navy patrolled the coast of Africa, intercepting slave ships. Roughly 1,600 ships were captured, 150,000 Africans freed, 2,000 British sailors dead doing that work. No one forced Britain to do this. The country was argued into it from within, by abolitionists, black and white, by ordinary citizens who boycotted sugar and signed petitions until their country finally listened. And it's worth asking, how does a country do this? How does an empire at the peak of its power decide to stop? Britain had two things that most empires in human history have not had in combination. It had a Christian moral tradition that insisted, against centuries of its own practice, that every human being bore the image of God and couldn't therefore be property. Christianity had been used for centuries to justify slavery before it was used to end it. But the abolitionists argued that the deeper current of the faith finally won out. That conviction drove the preachers, the Quakers, the Methodists, the evangelicals who made abolition their life's work. William Wilberforce said God had given him two great objects, and the first was the end of the slave trade. And Britain had a political tradition that made conviction actionable, a parliament that could be petitioned, a free press that couldn't be silenced, a public that could organize a sugar boycott and collect hundreds of thousands of signatures, free citizens in a democracy arguing their own country over decades into a better position. Turner's painting did not end the slave trade, but it became one of the cultural monuments of the moral turn Britain was making, a canvas that forced a country to feel, not just legislate, what it had been a part of. Empires fall, empires are conquered, but an empire that at the peak of its power turns around, looks at itself and says no more, that's almost unprecedented in human history. Turner painted this as a warning. I think he also painted it as proof that a country could face the worst of what it had done and choose to become something better. Thanks for watching all the way to the end. I'll see you in the next video, where we continue to explore the great masterpieces of the world and the paintings that changed how we think and feel.